joins us. Is that Hashem? All the usual people. My mother, David, Avital, Zahava, Katie, Carlos, Chaya. All these people watch afterwards or join us later. There's Hashem. My father just came in today. He's staying across the street here. Yep, he's here for a week. But he doesn't come to my lessons because he'll just fall asleep. We tried in the past. He didn't last more than like 5 minutes. That was it. So today was Yud Tet Kislev, or Yud Tes, or Yat Kislev, which is the Rosh Hashanah of Hasidus. And I think even non-Chabad Hasidim agree that it's the Rosh Hashanah of Hasidus. Even in Baterand, where there are Sans, Rapshitz, and Lelov, and all kinds of other things. We didn't say Tachnun today. There was no argument. We were not going to say Tachnun. And of course, it's when the Alter Rebbe was released from prison in 1798. And it wasn't just him being released from prison. Probably wasn't the first time he was released from prison. But it was considered a death sentence on Hasidus in Shemayim, and when he was released, then it was considered the time for Hasidus to be spread, and that's why we're doing it till today. There was an argument back in the time of the Alter Rebbe. This is a well-known parable where I don't remember which Pinchas of Koritz or one of the big Hasidim, maybe became a Rebbe, opposed the spreading of Hasidus. He said it was too high and the common people shouldn't be hearing Hasidus. It was made for somebody on a higher spiritual level. And the Alter Rebbe gave the mashal, the analogy of someone, was the prince who was sick, and they brought in a specialist doctor, and the doctor said there's the diamond on the crown of the king, ground it up and put it in the prince's mouth. But he was so sick he couldn't take it, so they just got one drop in there, and that one drop healed him. So the Alter Rebbe's answer was that we need to just get one drop of Hasidus in people's mouths, and we'll bring them back to life. And we were doing much more than that till today, of course. On the podcast, I'm now editing a story. This was a real challenge for me. I was given a book by Rabbi David Eliezri, who wrote The Secret of Chabad, wrote a book about the Rebbe Rayatz. His marketer contacted me, said, can you interview him? I said, I don't do interviews on the Hasidic Story Project. I tell stories, but if there's a story, I'll be willing to help out the rabbi. We went back and forth. I kept telling her, tell me where the stories are in the book, because I'm not going to read a 500-page book to find the story. The rabbi has to tell me. In the end, he called me on WhatsApp. It turns out he's a big fan of my podcast. When he realized who the marketing person I sent the book to, he wanted to talk with me. He was all excited. He told me what he thought was a good story, and I hope it comes out good, because I do a lot of work on these stories before I tell them. Now I'm cleaning it up. So that was just a side note. The story of the Rebbe Rayatz, the story of the Rebbe Ashab. And on Shabbos we had a guest who mentioned Rabbi Morgenstern, Rabbi Itchy Morgenstern. You know what I'm talking about? Does he have like a title or something? They call him something? Okay. So he's kind of like a Rebbe, especially for English speakers, because he's a real Hasidic, like a tzadik, I guess we'd call him. And he also grew up in England, so he speaks fluent English. So for English speakers, it's nice to have like a Hasidic Rebbe that speaks English, like real English. I personally have never met him, but I know many people that have. And this guy that was at our Shabbos table is very close to the Rebbe, I guess we'd call him. And he said one time he was there, and there was a guy saying he didn't know if he should learn Tanya or Likutey Moharan. I think that was the question. The answer I remember. The answer was learn 1 year of Tanya and learn 1 year of Likutey Moharan and realize that they're saying the same thing. If If you can realize that they're saying the same thing, then you've like reached a level of understanding. So this guy, and I was talking about Tanya, how I studied Tanya for 30 years or something, and Likutey Moharan also for 30 years, and how much more I connect with Likutey Moharan than I do with the Tanya. And he said, wow, can you like share some things that are common? I said, everything is common. It's just using different language, but it's the same concepts. Rabbi Nachman has his way, the Alter Rebbe has his way. Use what you connect with. You connect with the Alter Rebbe, that's great. You connect with this, that's better. And so that's essentially what we're doing. Here we are in the Motzei Yud Tet Kislev, learning the Chassidus of Rabbi Nachman, but essentially we're learning the same Chassidus as the Alter Rebbe, and all of the Chassidus, of course, comes from the same source of the Baal Shem Tov. There was one night, a few months ago, I just couldn't sleep at night. It's pretty rare. I'll wake up at night, but I go back to sleep. If I really can't sleep, I get up and I take a book off the shelf and I start learning. I learned from Reb Shalom, who used to wake up all the time in the middle of the night, several times a night, and he would learn for half an hour, 45 minutes, and then go back to bed. So when I would meet him Shabbos morning, he would say, okay, here's all the things I learned last night. Let's go over them again when I'm not so tired. Although he was always tired. So I have this book called Great Hasidic Masters, and I opened it up, and who's the first great Hasidic master? Of course, the Baal Shem Tov. So I'm reading all these Torahs of the Baal Shem Tov. They're exactly word for word what shows up in the Likutey Moharan. Now you know where Rabbi Nachman got it from. No, he doesn't try to hide it. He said he grew up in the house of the Baal Shem Tov. And like I've said many times, he was a grandson. And his grandmother was the famous daughter of the Baal Shem Tov, Adel or Udal, who was basically the Rebbe for, I don't know if it was the first year or the first few months after the Baal Shem Tov passed away. But she actually took over as that position because she was on such a high spiritual level. Something I don't think you'd ever see today. Because you didn't have Haredim back then. They were just like religious Jews. They didn't have this concept of Haredim. The Haredim, of course, came only after the Reform movement and the Enlightenment and the Emancipation and all the stuff that came really after the Baal Shem Tov, more like the time of Rabbi Nachman. So that's what we're learning, fitting for the Motzei Yud Tet Kislev. We're continuing in Torah 76, Ayin Vav. And just as a very quick review, he said, here's how vision works. Vision, light goes out of the eye, light returns to the eye. What comes back into the eye is interpreted by the way that the person sees it. And somebody can see something and see it in different ways. And then he talks about bitachon, trust in Hashem, being on the level of istaklut, of seeing something. And he says when we see something, it puts it in proportion, puts it in limitation proportion. So, imagine you were dating somebody on the phone, you never saw them. You just had conversations with them, and you completely fell in love with this person on the phone, but you never saw them. And then you see them, so you might realize you didn't really love them. You just loved their voice or the way they spoke, or you might love them even more. But the second that you see this thing, now it has shape and form. So he says, when our trust in Hashem is on the level that we can see things, then we have shape and form to our bitachon, which only reinforces our bitachon, and then we get to see more of Hashem in the world, and more of Hashem in the world, and more of Hashem in the world. That's where we left off. Yiva'er she'et koach histaklut hazeh mesigim al yedei itkavut tzadikim. So he says, how do we get this ability to see things and with our trust in Hashem? It's through coming closer to the tzadikim. She'istaklut b'fneihem hi b'chinat pnei hashchina. That when we look at the tzadikim, we're looking at the face of the Shekhinah. And this is a quote from where is it? Parparot lechochma, which is one of the commentaries in the Likutey Moharan. V'zeh leshono. V'otzer amar ki yita bazar, so he quotes the Zohar, that tzadikim heim pnei hashchina. That tzadikim are the face of the Shekhinah. V'al yedei itkavut latzadikim, zocheh shetiyeh avodato b'bchinat ri'ah. And as you come closer to the tzadikim, you merit that your service of Hashem will be through the level of seeing. B'bchinat gvul uzman, that is shape and limitation. or limitation in time, ad kan lashano. So what he's saying is that we can work on having the level of trust that we see Hashem, but when you see a true tzaddik, like the Lubavitcher Rebbe, then it really grounds you. You really see holiness, and you can see what he calls the face of the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah, of course, is Hashem's presence in this world. So in the presence of a true tzaddik, you can really get a sense of godliness. That's the reason to come close to the tzadikim. And this is the aspect of the advantage of coming closer to the tzadikim. כי יש אנשים שהם בחינת הכתוב, צמא נפשי לאלוקים לקל חי. And there are the type of people that are, as it's written in Tehillim, are an aspect of what's written in Tehillim. My soul thirsts for you, God, the living God. Matai avo ve'areh pnei Elokim. When am I going to come and see the face of Hashem? So he's talking about a person, their service of Hashem, and they're learning, they want to see Hashem. It's like a full-on obsession. They're not just learning for learning's sake. They're not just davening for davening. They're davening because they really want to see Hashem. It's like a full-on obsession to see Hashem. So much so that it's like being thirsty. Perush, the meaning is, Adam she'avodat Hashem shelo, hi b'derech tzimaon, a person that their service of Hashem is by way of being thirsty. Tahainu kamo shemishu tzameh ma'od v'shoteh afinu mayim haraim. For example, a person that's extremely thirsty and they're even willing to drink poisonous or bad water, kagon mayim meluchim or meluchlachim, like salty water or dirty water. She'inam ma'ovim et tzam'ono, that they don't quench his thirst. Kamo shekatuv, kamo chen, gam ba'avodat borei yitbarach shemo. And so it is also with the person's service of Hashem. So we have a person that is so thirsty they'll drink anything, and so too you have people that their service of Hashem is like that. Yesh mi shemechimat ga'gu'av v'tzim'ono lidveikut ba'Hashem yitbarach. There are people that because of their longing and their thirst to be attached to Hashem, ein lo gvul midah, there's no limitation or measurement. And this causes that person that even though the person's intention is good, the person's learning is on the level of being bad water. That they don't quench the thirst of their soul and it remains thirsty. Let's explain this idea. There are certain types of people that they're always like an aspect of being thirsty. And they learn and they daven and they serve Hashem always, without stopping for a moment. And it's required for this person to have a refreshing and a renewal of their consciousness, of their thinking. They're always in a position of being thirsty. That this is serving Hashem with a constricted consciousness, mitoch algashat choser, with a feeling of lacking. So we're talking about a person that's learning all day, davening all day, doesn't waste their time on anything else except for davening and learning and whatever other types of service of Hashem they can do. And he says that person is like drinking bad water because they didn't give their mind a chance to sit and rest and think. Ki nafsho shokeket tamid la'avodat Hashem yitbarach, because a person is longing so much always to serve Hashem, af shehu belo zman v'sechel, לתת גבול כמה ללמוד ולהספיק בשעה שצריך להספיק. So this person is learning all the time, and they don't have a sense of time and intellect, sechel, common sense, knowing how much time to give to their learning and how much they can learn in a certain amount of time, and to achieve what they can learn in that amount of time. And through this, a person will feel like they filled up. Simcha v'ta'anug b'limudo, to have joy and pleasure in their learning. Umizeh yavo lemochim degadlut, and through this, a person will come to an expanded consciousness. So, for example, if we weren't learning Torah all day and we come to this lesson with a different consciousness than somebody who's been learning all day. Like this, I think this is apikorsut for Haredim. Like if a Haredi heard this, they would think that you're a heretic. How can you say such a thing? But he's saying the opposite. The reason that we can learn this lesson and have a type of expanded consciousness in learning it, more so than somebody who was sitting and learning Torah all day, is because we gave our mind kind of the opposite of learning Torah in order to come to the learning Torah. And we also have a zman, the gvul. We have a limited time and we're learning a limited amount. We're not just like saying, okay, it's 6 o'clock in the morning and I'm going till 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't care. I'm just learning all day. No, it's very limited. And he said this helps a person to learn by saying, this is the time and this is what I'm going to learn, and doing other things along it as well. That way the person will feel joy and pleasure in their learning, and then they'll come to a place of expanded consciousness. Because the sages, blessed memory, said, Lifamim bitula shel Torah hi kiyuma. Sometimes the not keeping Torah, or not learning Torah, is the keeping of the Torah. So that kagon shemevater Torah lehotza'at hamet ulachnasat kala umekaben kfar sachar ki'ilu osek b'Torah. So this is quoting Rashi. For example, if a person stops their Torah learning in order to bury a dead person or to make joyous kala at their wedding, person receives a reward as if they were learning Torah all the time. Okay, Torah hi kiyuma. So sometimes stopping to learn Torah is what keeps the Torah. Shalom Aleichem to Zahava and to Chaya. Kamo shekatuv, as is written, Eit la'asot Hashem hefero Toratecha. That there's a time to serve Hashem. I don't remember what hefero is.
Nullify.
It's happy. Huh? Nullify. Thank you. Nullify your Torah. Dashu b'Gemara berachot. It's taught in the Torah in Masechet Berachot. Haferot Toratecha, my ta'ama, to nullify your Torah. What is the reason? Mishum eit la'asot la'Hashem, because the time to do for Hashem, adkan. That's what it says. Perush. The meaning is kedei la'asot eit hainu gvul zman la'Hashem. So he says what we're talking about is to make a time that has limitation and in time and space for Hashem. Dahainu lavi et hashefa habale melamala begvul zman gashmi. That is to bring the abundance that comes from above into a time and place in a physical way. Shetzarich lahaferot toratecha. That a person has to cancel their Torah learning. Shelo yeh halimud b'tzimayon bli hefsek. So the person won't be learning in a way of being thirsty all the time without taking a break. She'az hu b'mochim dekatnut below shefa. Then a person is in a restricted consciousness or small-mindedness without any abundance being able to come down. Ela im hefsek kedei latet naicha lemochim v'itchatshut, as was mentioned above, unless it's with taking a break in order to give renewal and rest to the mind, as mentioned above, and through this, a person merits to have expanded consciousness. Meaning, doing a mitzvah besides learning to open your mind, or even better, work, this is my commentary, work will open your mind to see Hashem. Really, I really have a big problem with the Haredim in general, and I'm with Haredim for 3 hours every morning for the last 30-something years. I know them very well, I knew their fathers well, I know their kids well, I really get to see a lot, and there are many beautiful things about Haredim, especially the community. But if you really want to see Hashem, you have to go out into the world and have a business, really a business, a lot better than having a job. Like if you really want to know what bitachon is, open a business and let that support you. You will daven like you've never davened in your life. You will know what it is to have no money and not know where it's coming from and have only one place to ask it from, and that's from Hashem. And when you sit down and learn Torah, either in the morning or the night or whenever you find the time to learn Torah, your Torah learning is going to be on a whole different level than when you were sitting in cheder or kollel all day and getting paid 5,000 shekels or whatever it is and getting discounts here and running around and trying to make things work because you have to learn Torah all day. The irony is that you're going to be a better Torah student and you're going to be a better Jew when you go out into the world and allow your mind to interact with the world and then come back to learning Torah. And he says, this is exactly what Rabbi Nachman is saying here. In order to really learn Torah, you have to nullify Torah. That's the point that he's trying to bring. V'zeh ma'alat hitdabkut b'tzadikim. And this is the advantage of being connected to tzadikim. She'al yedei istaklut b'fneihem, by looking at their faces. Shehem b'chinat pnei Hashem, that they are an aspect of Hashem's face. Zocheh gam hu legvul zman. A person merits to have, to physically see a tzaddik, so that enables them to see Hashem, as it were, in a way that they couldn't without physically seeing the tzaddik. Ki heim tzadikim osim ba'avodatam, because them, the tzadikim, do with their service of Hashem, gvul uzman, limitation in time and space, ki yodim et hazman shetzarich la'aspik, va'afilo levatel min haTorah, because a person knows, because they know how much time you can learn in order to accomplish what you need to, and also when you need to nullify learning Torah in order to do other things, so that we won't get to this place of being thirsty, that this is serving Hashem with a small-mindedness and with dinim, with judgment, with severity. La'ashlamat havanat inyan, in order to complete understanding this concept, ra'oi la'atik et tfilat ma'aronat ant Torah zo. So he says, we're going to bring in the prayer that Reb Nassan adds at the end of this Torah. Actually, this is from Pei Dalet, from a different Torah, but this is the prayer. V'zeh leshono, she'ezke leida be'emet, ech litnaheg b'chol davar, that I'll know how to behave regarding every matter. U'belimud Torah hakdusha, and regarding my holy Torah learning, ech latet kitzba u'gvul lelimudai she'eda matai lemod, how to give a time and a limitation to my learning so that I'll know when I'm supposed to learn, u'matai levatel be'etach echrach, and to know when I should nullify my Torah learning when it's necessary. באופן שיתקיים מוחי ושכלי בשלמות גדול בקדושה גדולה כי רצונך הטוב, so that I will have my mind and my consciousness complete in a truly complete way with great holiness, as is your goodwill, Hashem. ולא יזיק לו חס ושלום, לא יזיק לי חס ושלום, ריבוי הלימוד ועסק חוץ מהגבול. That my Torah learning shouldn't cause damage to me, or an esek, I'm not sure if it's, I don't think it means opening a business. I mean, it means esek a Torah, like my toiling in Torah, should not go beyond the limits. There's a time to do for Hashem, and there's a time to cancel His Torah. Pa'amim bitula shel Torah hi zeu kiyuma. Sometimes, our Sage Blessed Memory said, sometimes nullifying Torah is for the sake of keeping the Torah. V'zeh perush hapasuk, and this is the meaning of the verse. Tzama nafshi le'elokim leken chai. And my soul thirsts for Hashem, God, the living God. Zeh b'chinat tzima'on kanan. This is connected to being thirsty, as mentioned above. Matai avo v'lo yehe b'chinat tzima'on ela eyeh b'chinat gvul uzman. When am I going to reach the place that I'm not just going to be thirsty from Hashem, but I'm going to know that there's a time and limitation and put Hashem in a sense, in a way that I can grasp Hashem. B'chinat matai avo. This is connected to when will this time come. Sheyesh man she'avo v'yesh man shelo. There are times when it's going to come, and there's times when it's not. Ve'er'eh pnei Elokim ve'er'eh daika. And I will see the face of Hashem. I will see specifically Tahainu she'ezkeh she'tiyeh avodah b'pchinat ri'ah. That I will merit to serve Hashem on the level of seeing. Hainu ri'ah be'or chozer. That is the seeing with the returning light. She'i kar ri'ah, which is the main aspect of seeing, right? If a person, God forbid, can't receive the light back, the light might go out of their eye, but they can't see because it doesn't come back. Lezeh zochim al yedei pnei Elokim. And this we merit by the aspect of Hashem's face. Haromez ala tzadikim shehim b'chinat pnei hashchina. That's hinted at regarding the tzadikim, that they are the face of the Shechina. Dahainu al yedei itkavut la tzadikim. That is becoming close to the tzadikim. Yevaer shelifamim al yedei menucha ve'hafsaka me'alimud. It's going to explain that sometimes through resting and stopping to learn Torah, zochim litchatshut b'mochim. Person merits to have a renewed consciousness, a new way of seeing things. Hankein kefishanit be'er, and so as it was explained, she'avodah tzricha liot shelo b'derech tzima'on. That when we serve Hashem, it has to be a way of not being thirsty. B'chol yom b'yom tzarich litchatshut hamochim. Every day a person needs to renew their mind. Sheb'chol yom tzarich levatel me'at melimudo. That every day a person needs to nullify a little bit of their learning. Kadei she'yitchatshu hamochim. So that their consciousness will be renewed, their mind will be renewed. Kamosh katuv. Okay, so let's read. There's a big footnote here. Inyan ze mevorar be'arichut b'Likutey Moharan. So Likutey Moharan, one of the books in the Breslov library, was Elishano. This idea is explained there, and this is what it says. She'ichnisoti. This is so Likutey Moharan is, I think, it was written after Rabbi Nachman passed away. It's Reb Nassan writing about memories he had from Rabbi Nachman, things like advice and things that happened. She'echnisoti b'hatmatat halimud. When he brought me into the regular study of Torah, v'tziva alai v'kavali shiurim gedolim b'chol yom, and Rabbi Nachman commanded me and established for me big chunks of Torah learning all day. L'lmod shas, kach v'kach, l'shulchan aruch v'chulei v'chulei b'chol yom. Should learn this much of the Talmud and this much of the halacha, the regular law, the Jewish law, and so on every day. V'hizhir oti b'chol yom, and he warned me every day, ir'eh ledaber im bnei adam, eze sichot v'sipurim kedei lefakeach da'ati. That even though he gave me all this stuff to learn, he said, make sure to be very careful that I set aside the time to have conversations and stories with regular people in order to open up my mind. V'af al pi shelo haya hayom naspik li nigmor hashiurim shetziva alai. Even though there wasn't enough time in the day to learn all of the things that Rabbi Nachman had commanded Reb Nassan to learn, af al pi chen amar, nonetheless, he said to me, shezeh muchrach lefakeach da'ati b'chol yom al yedei sicha im bnei adam eze sha'ah b'yom. That even though he couldn't learn all that Rabbi Nachman had commanded him to do, Rabbi Nachman still said it's necessary for you to open up your mind every day by having conversations with people for around an hour a day. It's already explained in another place. שהשיחה עם בני האדם היא כמו שינה שהיא נייחה למוחין. That having a conversation with people is like resting for the mind. גם אחר כך אמר לי, and afterwards he said to me, שגם בתוך הלימוד בעצמו צריכים לפעמים לעמוד, לפוש ולנוח ולפקח דעתו, להניח דעתו לחירות איזה שעה. He also said that in learning itself, you have to sometimes take a break to relax and rest your mind and open your mind and to put your thoughts aside, give them some freedom for a short amount of time. ובלבד שלא תצא מחשבתו לחוץ לגמרי, חס ושלום, but it shouldn't get to the point that a person completely forgets about what they were learning, God forbid, לחשוב מחשבות רעות או הרהורים רעים, חס ושלום, עד כאן שלום. To think bad thoughts or to have your mind distracted, God forbid. עוד כתב שם, he wrote also there, וזה לשונו, אמר כשהמוח נתייגע מהלימוד, when the mind makes an effort in learning, אז צריכים לסוח ולדבר שיחות חולים עם בני האדם כדי לפקח דעתו. Then a person has to go out and have conversations with regular people in order to open up their mind. והשיחה הזאת היא כמו שינה שהיא נייחה למוחים. And this conversation is like resting, it's rest for the mind. ושיחה כזו אינה בכלל דברים בטלים חס ושלום כלל. And this conversation is not something that is just pointless, God forbid at all. אדרבה, on the contrary, היא מצווה גדולה, ועל ידי זה אמור עמותנו זכרם וחה, it's a great mitzvah, and through this our sage of blessed memory said, ביטולה של תורה, זהו קיומה. Sometimes nullifying the Torah is the way that we need to keep it. כמו שכתוב, as is written, עת לעשות להשם הפרות תורתך. Sometimes there's a time to learn, sometimes there's a time not to learn. כי אם לא יבטל קצת לפקח דעתו בשיחה, if somebody doesn't stop learning for a short amount of time in order to open up their mind, אזי חס ושלום יתבטל מכל וכל. Then everything will be nullified in the end. Where was that? That was 30. That was over here. כמו שכתוב, as is written, we're just going to go to the end of this section here. חדשים לבקרים וכולי רבה אמונתך. As we say every morning when we get up, blessed are you Hashem, who has restored his faith in me. Great is your faith in me. שבכל לילה בשעת השינה, every night, the time that we go to sleep, הנשמה של האדם עולה לספירת המלכות. A person's soul goes up to the attribute of malchut. שהיא בחינת אמונה, which is the level of אמונה, having faith in Hashem. והיא מקבלת שם מוחים חדשים. And through that a person receives a new consciousness. וכשקם משנתו, יש לו התחדשות המוחים. When a person wakes up, they have a new way, their mind is refreshed. וכמו שכתוב, as is written, המחדש בטובו בכל יום תמיד מעשה וראשית. As is written, and we say this in the davening, that Hashem renews everything all the time in His goodness, and every day is created anew. היינו שהקדוש ברוך הוא מחדש את שכלו של האדם בכל יום. That is, a person renews a person's mind every day. ומבואר מהעונה את הקשר בין עניין זה למה שנתפאר לעיל בעניין ראייה. And he's going to explain now Reb Nassan's connection, making the connection between this idea of the renewing of the mind and to the idea of seeing. כי חידוש המוח, דהיינו שזוכה לשכל חדש, the renewing of the mind, that is when we merit to have a clear and refreshed mind, ושכלו הולך וגדול בכל פעם, and the person's mind goes forward and expands all the time, זו בחינת ראייה. This is connected to seeing. וטעם הדבר, and the reason is, כי כבר נתבאר לעיל, as explained above, שידיעה השכל הוא בחינת ראייה. How does the mind know things? It knows things through seeing. Sheyodea umevina devar an buyo. That a person knows and understands something in a very clear way. Ki'ilu ro'eh oto be'einav be'yir'a yafa. As if a person sees things with their eyes with a very clear vision. K'mo shekatuv, as is written in Bereshit, ve'tipakachna einei shnehem. And both of their eyes were opened up. We're talking about Adam and Chava. Perush Rashi explains, Al Shem HaChochma Ne'emar. So this was what we're talking about when we say that their eyes were opened, She'nitpakchu einei shedachem sichlam, that the eyes of their mind were opened up. That was what their eyes were already opened. Kamuvah b'divrei Rabbeinu kama pa'amim, as brought by Rabbi Nachman a number of times. L'chein tzarich sheyeh halimud shelo b'derech tzimaon. And so a person has to learn Torah not in a way of like being thirsty all the time, lelo hafsek, without ever taking a break, ela im b'pchinat bitula hi kiyuma. But rather, a way of nullifying a Torah is keeping the Torah. Latet naichen amochim, to give rest to your mind. V'al yedei ze megadlim v'zoche liyediat hasechen. And through this, a person expands and merits to have the knowledge of the soul. She b'chinat ri'ah, which is the aspect of seeing, because what we see is reflected back and interpreted by the mind. So in order to have that, we have to take a break. We have to see other things, and then we will merit to really see the Torah learning that we were learning in another way. Shegam kein inyana latet gvul zman v'kanal. That's also a way of giving time and space to what you're learning. So just read the introduction here to the next section, which we'll learn next week. Yaktim leve'er od b'inyan ha'inyan hagashmit kedei li'lmod mimena. We're going to learn more about this idea of bringing things into a physical space in order to learn what it is to have vision of the intellect. Okay, so making sense? It's heavy. Like it gets very deep into it, but we've been doing this for a long time. Although, at one point, we are going to get to shorter lessons. It just hasn't happened yet. But we're moving along. At some point, you're going to see like all the lessons are going to be one line. We're going to do 2 or 3 in each time we sit down. But not yet. It is Hashem. Okay, so since it was Yud Tes Kislev, I'm going to give a little story of the Alter Rebbe. It's a well-known story. It was Yom Kippur. And the Alter Rebbe is in shul during the daytime. He's davening with his talis, and the Hasidim see him take his talis off, walk out of the shul, grab an axe, start cutting wood, takes the wood, of course they follow him, takes it to the house of a woman who had given birth the day before Yom Kippur. Where was her husband? He was busy davening in shul, of course, because that's where you're supposed to be. And the Alter Rebbe makes a fire, boils water, cooks something for this woman, and feeds her himself. And the Hasidim at first were shocked to see the Rebbe, be mechalel, to break Yom Kippur, which is Shabbat HaShabbaton, which is not just Shabbat, but it's the Shabbos of Shabbases. But he understood that Pikuach Nefesh, saving a person's life, is more important than keeping Shabbos. And the Alter Rebbe, Rebbe is Rosh Bnei Yisrael, the head of the Jewish people. So if my little pinky on my left foot has a little tiny needle poking into it, or even the nail is poking into it, or the socks are too tight, or the shoe is too tight, I'm going to feel it in my head. A Rebbe, who's on that level, feels the pain of a woman who gave birth when he's davening on Yom Kippur. That's how we know that we're not Rebbes yet. I don't know. Meira will probably get there. Maybe Aryeh as well. I know that I'm definitely not on that level. I remember there was a story of between two rabbis, I don't remember who was, Sons or the Rishner, one of the big rabbis, who somebody came to him and said, how will I know I'm on the level to be a rebbe? He said, when a woman gives birth 300 kilometers from you and you feel her pain, then you'll know that you're on the level to be a rebbe. And it's real, because you look at, the Alter Rebbe in the story, you look at the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who, these crazy stories, there's the story that I've told on the podcast, I told it here, that he gives this Rabbi Weinberger a box of matzah, tells him to deliver it in the middle of nowhere in Africa, and he had no intention of being there during Pesach, like before Pesach, or being in Africa. And he ends up, the plane landed there because they needed repairs. He spent 3 days finding this Jew. And this guy was so lonely, he wanted to convert to Christianity. And he said, if I get a sign, I'll give Hashem 30 days to send me a sign. This was the last day, like the last hour as the sun was setting. And here he shows up with a box of matzah and says, this is from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And how can something like that be? It's totally impossible. There are literally thousands of stories of the Rebbe doing this stuff. That's Rosh Bnei Yisrael. The beautiful thing that I like about the story is that the Rebbe did exactly what we were learning about in this lesson. He didn't say, okay, I have to be davening all day. I have to be learning all day. He knew enough that there was a woman that gave birth and nobody was taking care of her, and she needed to be taken care of. I'm sure when he came back to daven, his davening was at a much higher level than if he had ignored this woman or wasn't on the level to feel her pain. And like I said, today in modern Israeli society, we're dealing with a very strange phenomenon in Jewish history of people that don't want to work, don't want to serve in the army because learning Torah is everything to them. But Rabbi Nachman is saying, no, if you were to serve in the army or you were to work and set aside a nice chunk of time to learn Torah, 3 or 4 hours a day, those 3 or 4 hours will be much higher than your Torah learning all day long. So it's my hope and prayer that everyone, not just the Haredim, will reach the level of opening their mind through interacting with the world and reaching a higher level of learning Torah as a result of it, Bezat Hashem. I was going to finish, but I'll just mention one thing. It was very interesting. Friday night, I hope the microphone is still working here. There was this young Haredi guy at my note, and a little plastic sleeve fell on the floor. Like you put it in a notebook. And I'll hold it over here so everybody can hear me. And I saw him kicking it with his foot and moving it around. And at some point I said to him, can you please pick it up? I thought, what's wrong with this guy? Can't pick it up? He said, isn't it muktzeh? I said, it's a piece of clear plastic. How could it be muktzeh? He said, I wasn't sure. I thought maybe it was muktzeh. So now I judged him negatively. I thought, what a moron. They can't pick up a piece of plastic. But then when he said to me the reason he wasn't picking it up and why he was pushing it around with his foot, because he thought it was like a pen. I don't know why, but that's what he thought. Now I judge him positively. So it's very easy to look at the other and say, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. I guarantee you most of their intentions are good. And I think a lot of these young guys actually want to serve in the army. They're just waiting for their rabbis to say yes. Bezat Hashem should hear good news. What are we singing? Let me sing the same thing every single week. don't have a class on Hanukkah. It's going to be 2 Tuesday nights? I don't know. Anybody that's still here, you'll know. There's no class next week. And if it's Hanukkah, I'm not giving a class. But as soon as Hanukkah's over, I'll be back with Hashem.
I think it's starting Sunday night.
Yeah, Sunday night. So it goes Sunday night to Sunday night.
And in years Hashem, maybe we'll see you. Do you know, is there